Thank you for joining us today. It's July 19th, 2023, and the time is 5:02. Council, I'll call your name, so please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop.
Here.
Councilmember Roden.
Here.
Councilmember Bliss is not present. Councilmember Kerner.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
And Councilmember Menchow.
Present.
With 6 of 7 council members present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. And would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I would like to thank everybody for joining us today for this special meeting. We are live broadcasting today's meeting, so I ask that if you do get an opportunity to speak as part of this meeting, that you speak and use the microphone that's up here. If you don't speak from the microphone, then those that are on the live broadcast can't hear the comments that are being made. And last, if you do get an opportunity to speak, I ask you to introduce yourself. If you're from an agency, what agency you're from, or if you're a resident, please state your name and whether you're a Fair Oaks Ranch resident or not. And with that, we'll move on to citizens to be heard, who have one email that was submitted to me and asked to be read at the meeting tonight. It's from Al Schmidt, a former council member for the city, and he states that I can't come to the Civic Center workshop. I hope the discussions can pin down a square footage instead of the 3,000 to 5,000 range, which could require several designs. Also hope the facility name is considered. As we discussed, the name should reflect the council and the community use. I believe a kitchenette is appropriate for the multi-use area. Also need to address a parking area. And the annual upkeep and insurance costs are important for planning purposes. And then he states that he'd asked me if I'd read the email at tonight's meeting. Signed Al Schmidt. And nobody else signed up to speak as part of Citizens to be Heard. Is there anybody here that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? Okay, and with that, then we'll move on to the reason that we're here tonight is for the workshop on Civic Center design. And Scott, are you going to
Yes, Mr. Mayor,
off?
Council, thank you. I'll kick it off very briefly. Thank you for coming tonight on relatively short notice for this session. We're here tonight to really kick off the design process for the Civic Center or Community Center, if you prefer. This will be the first step in the process tonight to facilitate this discussion with the council, and that was part of the designer's scope to start at this level. So the design consultant, Lopez Salas Architects, will facilitate the discussion. They will briefly provide some possible site options for the facility, and they'll also discuss with you some proposed uses for the facility based on generally what we've heard so far throughout these discussions over really the last few years. Primarily tonight, we would like to reach consensus on the proposed uses for the facility. That consensus will be used, for staff, for the consultant to guide the next steps. Some of those next steps after tonight include meetings with stakeholder groups that could use the facility, and that will also include at least a public meeting, if not more, with residents to get their feedback on a conceptual plan for the facility. So all of those steps, starting with tonight, will influence the design of the facility, and the project team will walk you through that schedule as we go through the process. But that's the very broad overview, and tonight's the first step. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Robert Lopez and his team who will walk you through the process. So, Robert, go ahead.
And just to reiterate, so the biggest takeaways that we need tonight is what are the uses that we would like to see as part of the Community Civic Center. Okay?
That might help. There, okay. I'm always told that my voice carries, so I didn't even realize it wasn't on. But to review a lot of the information, let me start by saying my name's Robert Lopez, and I'm a principal of the firm Lopez Salas Architects in San Antonio, but we work all over the state. And we work with many municipalities, and it's really a pleasure to be here with you all. With that in mind, a lot of the front-end information, I realize that you have it in front of you already. A lot of it is information that we were provided in the RFQ. So it's not foreign to you. We want to make sure that we review it and make sure that some of the uses of the building are still current in your mind. Anything that you think needs to be removed from that list, we'll remove. Anything that needs to be added for future uses of that building. We just want to hear from you. We're here to listen tonight, kind of give you an idea of some of the things that we've looked at after we've been here on site and looked around. So this is very early on in the process, but to get us to the next step, it's real important to go over these items with you to make sure that we are all on the same page and get your guidance to move to the next step. So with that said, if you can go to the next slide. So we divided this into two sections. The potential functions of the building, functional areas of the building, as we saw it, and some of these were given to us, some of these we added on that list, and then the potential uses for the building. So we understand that that facility will be utilized for city council meetings, very similar to what we have today. Commission, board, and committee meetings, the list is there for you to read. I don't want to bore you with reading it, but those are the elements that we were given that we have been told that you feel is important uses for this facility. Anything that you add or take away from that list will inform us as to what functional areas need to be added to the building. Obviously, any facility like this is going to have a lobby, public restrooms. There's a need for offices in this facility. I don't know how many offices, but hopefully you'll kind of give us some indication what you think is required. There's a notion about a kitchen, and we hope after our meeting today we'll have some more information about whether or not it's a warming kitchen that's simpler to build, a lot less expensive, or a commercial kitchen, which is, adds a little bit more cost because of kitchen equipment, but then you have grease traps and those type of things that are required, hood. And so we typically in a facility like this, we usually see a warming kitchen, but so that's on the list. We've never finished a building that we didn't hear back from the owner afterwards that they didn't say, man, I wish we had more storage. If we would just had more storage. So I want us to think about the requirements for storage in your facility. I know that we have a 3,000 to 5,000 square foot, in that ballpark, but we want to make sure that we provide enough storage. And then chair storage. You have a large meeting space that needs to be very flexible. And in that flexibility, you're going to have, sometimes you may have round tables for an event. Sometimes you may have tables very similar to the ones you're sitting behind. And in lots of these type of chairs, everything needs to be stored at times. So we want to make sure that we provide adequate chair storage. We want that space to be very flexible for different events. And also after visiting what we are understanding to be the preferred site, those trees are amazing. So we want to make sure that we protect your trees. We want to make sure that we do not remove any tree unless we absolutely have to. But that where the existing building is right now, that general area, if we utilize that area for a structure, the back end of that building would lend itself perfectly to have an outdoor area, which would be very shaded and be utilized for lots of different things. So I could see that large space in your facility facing that back area with lots of glass, because we've got that shade already. We can provide deep overhangs in that building and kind of blur that interior exterior. In this time of the year, you want a very definite division between the outside and the inside. But there's times of the year where you could open doors and have a very open area outside and inside and utilize that space as a much larger area. We want to study that and provide some options for that. So that's really the main thrust of our meeting today, is just to look at this list and get some feedback from you, hopefully get some direction. And then the remainder of the slides that you have in front of you is just some observations that we've had made while being here on site. You have a beautiful piece of property, and whatever we do, once this sits lightly on the property, I think you've done a really good job of developing these buildings here. So we want to be very sensitive to how we locate a new structure there. So, and we can kind of walk you through that afterwards. But are there any comments on this list? Any? Yes, ma'am.
I didn't realize that we needed room for office space. So that was kind of one of my first questions, is do we need offices in that building?
Right.
Open discussion, and we didn't tell us a great deal at our pre-meeting, other than once upon a time and one of the plans that was considered for
Well,
staff, but we were also talking about not necessarily for staff space, but for office space in the building for someone to potentially staff the building as well. But again,
Yeah.
open discussion.
I would consider the fact that we could take out the offices personally.
I do
Same.
think we probably need one office in case one day we choose to man it. Like, and someone has to sit there and take requests to come into the building and all that stuff, but that would be the only thing I could think of. Like one little space, I guess.
Maybe we could have it as like until that day arrives, it could be used as a more private, either storage or conference room. Something. I mean, a flexible room that we could
I don't
turn
think,
into something else.
so I guess the feedback is I don't think we need offices, plural, possibly an office for somebody, a small
Okay.
office for somebody to staff if they need to take people coming in, et cetera. But in general, it should be a pretty stinking small room and nothing adequate.
I do think of one use that could be used for is right now as a council member, I have nowhere to meet in City Hall or anywhere with a constituent without taking someone else's desk or somewhere space. So it might be nice to have that one office, but since we don't have it manned now, available for council members' use if we want to meet with a resident we want to meet at City Hall. Right now, most of us have meetings at Spotted Deer or Parker's or all this stuff. We really just didn't have a space to do that if we wanted to. So, so I'm back to the one office thing, but but that
I
could
think
be
that-
used.
Yeah, I think one office is fine.
Yeah. But making it an office building, no.
No.
Not an office building.
Yeah, that's noted. And the only thing I would add about that single office is that if it's identified as kind of a flex office where it's going to be utilized for different situations, it's a good idea to have that office. But if somebody needs to be in that office, it becomes their office, and then you lose that space. So just let us know how to proceed. But just a thought that sometimes that one little office is perfect for whatever person needs to be in there, and then that just becomes their office, and then you lose that flex space. So if
But
if
we
we
will
need
also have the entire thing for the meeting. I mean, if we wanted to have meetings somewhere,
We could have.
we could
whole
have
room.
it in the entire building, so I don't see that being an
Okay.
issue. So,
a small meeting space in there, would that, that's not on my list, but
No.
would that be helpful?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I think you just make this an office/small conference room, just small enough for
Sure.
a table now.
Yeah.
You know, and a couple of 3 chairs to have, like Laura said, a meeting with anybody here, but that would
Okay.
be it, yeah.
So, I had a couple of points. If we're gonna, be using this for municipal court, we had the, consultations with security folks about, making sure that it meets the security standards that it should be meeting for an actual courtroom. And so I would, if we're, if we're building this from scratch, I would, probably recommend that we make sure that we're meeting those requirements and having secure entrance and exit and stuff like that.
Are we going there? Are we
It-
going to move the court there?
I didn't know we were.
I don't know,
think that's
I
a
was on
plan.
the potential use list, so
Yeah.
that's why I was throwing that out there. If that's what happens, then I would say we need to do that. The second thing that I was gonna bring up is parking. It doesn't look like the options add much parking, and so that would maybe be a little concerning, just as the community grows and depending on what it's going to be used for. I mean, if we start having town halls there and more people come, there's not a whole lot of parking.
Yeah, we've noticed that, just a couple of times that we've been out here, walking around, taking photographs. So what we've just done is just to kind of give you a broad sense of some of the things that we're looking at. And mainly, as it relates to the site plans, it's just a discussion about what we've seen, the pros and the cons of the certain areas on your site. But once, we will get a survey, and once we have a survey of everything that's existing, there'll be a lot more information there as far as what a facility of this size would require for additional parking. And then we will work with staff to understand when there's parking shortages, when there's, events or city council meetings, and work around that to kind of at least provide some options. I understand that our charge is to design this building and the parking that's required for the building. But we would be more than happy to look at the site and see how the parking that's already here, how it'll be affected by that facility, and so.
Well, the other part about the parking, though, is that we removed the portable buildings now, so we have that entire lot that we haven't had for however long that others have been there. So that's a good, I think, thing. But personally, I feel like we throw out the municipal court option on this. I just don't think, I think keeping them here, I mean, I don't know how the rest of you guys feel, but my thing is, I would say pull the municipal court off the potential uses for that building.
Fine.
Agreed.
I agree.
Well, my thoughts on that are that this building and this room that we're in right now was built for the municipal court, for the city, and obviously with the diocese and everything that's in here. And I'm just not sure that I don't believe that we need to offer up another facility for the court.
I agree. I mean, and I know we're going to be doing some safety improvements too, so I'm good with that.
The point is well taken. Even if we're having city council, it might be worth looking at security beef up for those type of meetings as well. I mean,
And then my last comment was just going to be about the trees. I appreciate if we can avoid taking out any tree.
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful parts of this property is the trees, as it is when you drive into Fair Oaks Ranch. I mean, you seems like your blood pressure drops, and you're surrounded by beauty and trees, and so we're very respectful of that. We want to make sure that that's something that we are very mindful of. Obviously, buildings require space, and sometimes that requires a loss of a tree or 2 trees, but that's not our plan. Our plan is to kind of work around it and try to protect the trees. So our survey will include a tree and topography survey. So we'll have an idea where everything is in that general area, so.
I got a question on the general storage. What's needed there, Scott, that's on the list there? Do we not have adequate storage for files and records, or what is that to cover, would you say?
I don't know if we need additional storage really for what our current operations. So I think that was, we primarily talked about the chairs, as Robert talked about, and anything else that really would be needed for this facility. We're not looking, at least from a staff perspective, for additional operational storage as part of this.
That certain item was something that we added just as a discussion point, just in general, just to have, make sure that we have adequate storage, apart from the chair storage that we will need in that large room. And at some point, while we're in the design process, we'll work with you all to find out how you're going to use that space and what type of chairs and tables you might utilize. And that'll inform the size of the storage, how we approach it, stackable chairs that roll on a caddy and that sort of thing. So we've done this many times, so it's just a matter of making sure that we don't forget the importance of having enough storage in the building, so.
Just the storage would be for that facility itself, right? For whatever goes on
Yes,
there,
yes.
it needs to support it, okay.
So tonight from us, are you looking for what it is that we want in this? Because I think it's, in my mind, it's a little bit difficult, given that, you know, there's a lot of things that are really nice to have. I'd like a full kitchen. I understand a warming kitchen is great, but we have a budget also that we want to stay within. So we can shoot for the stars and say we want all these things, but are you trying to get us to list, okay, we have to have this, 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 and this to fit in our budget, and then it would be nice to have the rest of these, but we can pick and choose between those if it's going to throw us $1 million over budget. So I'm trying to understand what process we're going through today.
That's a very good point. The idea today is to get some direction on this list, on the things that you need. Not to say that budget isn't important, but right now, we know that the cap for this building, as far as, you know, we've been told, is 5,000 square feet. It'll probably be close to 5,000 square feet based on what we have seen. But based on that 5,000 square feet and a budget, we can get whatever it is that you need in this building, we can get in there as long as we fit it within the 5,000 square feet.
So do you know what our budget is?
I gave them a budget of, I believe it was $450 a square foot or $400 a square foot in the initial
So
discussion.
what does that calculate
It's
out
$2
to
million.
for me? Okay.
Yeah, 2 million, so.
I have some questions on that 5,000 number. So how did you come up with 5,000?
We haven't, we're just getting started. The RFQ said 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. And so,
But in your experience, you said you've done this many times, does that make sense for this size? Does it fit on that site? Is it about the same size as the old building?
right now, we're using a 5,000 square foot block to make sure that that fits. So that's how we just kind of start looking at what a 5,000 square foot block would.
Okay.
Trim
Well,
to,
I think my concern is we're starting on the high end, and I'm thinking start on the low end, because, you know, we don't want monstrosity. I mean, we want use, but at the same time, I just don't want, well, we said 3,000 to 5,000, so we're starting at 5, which means it's gonna end up 6, which, you know, so that's what so I wanna understand, how big is that? Like, how big is this building? So I know how big 5,000 square foot is, like, because I don't envision that in my head.
And I think those are very valid questions. I think that since we're just getting started, and typically what we do is once we have a list of spaces that we know you need, we start looking at how big these spaces need to be. So this is a very simple building. It's a large event space.
Yep.
That with a few support spaces, lobby, restrooms, a little bit of storage, maybe an office, but the main thrust of this building. So once we get an idea of how large that flexible event space needs to be, we don't know that yet. All we were given is 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. So we're just at the beginning stages, and so your questions are very valid, but I think the next time when you start seeing some diagrammatical plans, we'll work with staff and with you all to look at what that space may feel like. And the questions always are, well, how many people can I sit in there? And so we'll have a diagram that says if people are sitting in a situation like this, you can get X number of people in there. If you have an event where there are round tables, this is how many people you'll be able to fit. If it's a conference where there's a long skinny tables, and we'll show you the 2 or 3 scenarios, and that's what will set the square footage for that main space that'll then inform how big your building's gonna be. Because at some point, you're gonna say, you know what? We don't need 125 people in that room. 100 people would be fine, whatever that number is, and then we'll know how large that space needs to be.
You know, I think it'd be good, I mean, you guys have done this, as you say, in other situations, but to help us, give us a general idea, like 100 people in a room that does these things would require this big of a room, and then, of course, you'd add to it those other support pieces. So if y'all had something, at least give us a guide that would show us 100, 150, 200, whatever you have.
Yes.
That might help us, because we can't just say, oh, I don't know, you know, a couple hundred people maybe, or 200. So I think if we could
Yeah.
put some boundaries around that, it would help us think through that.
Yes, and that's exactly what I said. That'll be the next step, is to
Okay.
provide that scenarios for you all to look at and see how that,
What range are you using as your initial scenarios?
as far as
Well, I
seating.
mean, obviously you have to start with something. So what range of how many people are you assuming is the,
We haven't started yet, but I'm thinking about 100 people.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that's been kind of just a start.
Would you say that's about the size you would see of a city, like of a center of this type for a city our size?
Probably a little larger, but yes, about
Okay,
that
so other ones
size.
are typically a little larger?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, you can get 100 people sitting very comfortably in a setting like this, but it's very different when you have a special event and people are sitting around round tables, and you know get 8 people to a table, and that arrangement changes the space requirements.
Yeah,
And that's why the uses are kind of important to us.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to comment on all the potential uses. They're not all as important as each other. And so while you're talking a lot about tables and events, that's on the bottom part of my list. My number 1 is city council voting and town hall meetings. That's the purpose of this. The main purpose of the building, will we open it up to private events and local organizations? Yes, but I'm not going to design it to host a 150-person wedding intentionally. You know, but those are the 3 things. Like, we need somewhere to vote. We need somewhere to hold
Okay.
city council meetings and have town halls. And will we open it up to the residents? Absolutely, but that's just a side benefit, I guess, you know.
Sure.
I
But
agree
you're-
with Laura.
Yeah, it's important to make sure that we have this dialogue and make sure we understand moving forward, but I think those are all very valid points.
I was kind of going through the list, and Laura, you initiated the discussion. I mean,
Yeah.
what size are we looking at? And so I had the same ones: the city council, commissions, FORHA, town meetings, and voting locations, town hall meetings. And so looking at that, the one that I saw that's probably could be the biggest would be the town hall meetings. You know, I think at the first transportation town hall meeting, we were almost at 100 people that attended it. But it wasn't round tables, right? But looking at that as
Yeah.
the basis of what we would, you know, maybe it's 100, 150, the capability to get up to 150 people seated in there. And then I think if that was supported, it would support all of the other
Absolutely.
efforts that.
Seated like this, potentially,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
but not
Better to go
around
larger up
tables.
front than to go too small and wish we had,
Right.
you know.
I have a question, Greg. Are we thinking of having our old city council chambers having a dais like that?
Well, that was a
Built
question
in?
I had down here, is
Okay.
that, and my thoughts would be yes.
Mm-hmm.
That we'd want a diocese built into it, that would be a permanent structure within the facility.
Maybe,
And then we would
Separated by a
close-
wall.
yeah, closed off or something. Yeah.
And how would you do that? So,
I mean, you could do it
This?
kind of like this and just, but have the dais like that, but then have the doors that can close it off to the bigger room.
If you want to utilize the same space for two functions, that probably would be the best scenario. I think the only way to do it is doing like that, to have a partitioned off area in the room, whether it's wood panels or something else, but then it could be opened up for that use, and then you can close it off and then utilize that for events and other functions.
because my thoughts would be is that you'd want the diocese set up in a way that you could use that with the entire room.
Have it
Yes.
at the end
So-
of the room.
And then at some point, for security reasons or just so it doesn't get torn up, you'd want to wall it off. Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, that's been our thought too after our initial discussion with staff. Yeah.
Yes, if we're going to go down the city council meeting trail, because it is going to be the primary use, is one, we have to make sure we have the cameras and the audio and all that set up within there, at least thought of during the design phase. Like, okay, how are we going to have certain things set up in a way, because we have to live stream, we have to be able to see people just like this, and I like to have that at least within the original design structure, to think, and then later on, all of a sudden, we're gonna add audio or whatever, and they're like, oh, we didn't even think about that. I want it in there, video and audio, and then going back to the offices, do we need a room to do executive sessions? Where we can go out of the main room, go into a small, that's what we used to do. We used to go into a small conference room. The residents would stay in the room. We would leave for executive session, go to a closed-off room, and then come back. That was, in some ways, better, because there's less of us than the audience.
I would recommend that.
Yeah, so that might be an important room to have
So maybe have
in there.
two
To,
office spaces.
To have an office and a conference room.
Right.
right, and the conference room could be our executive session or anything else. 'Cause I did like that better.
Yeah.
It did feel more secure. We didn't have to worry about audio being left on or da-da-da, and having everyone else leave and find, like, just randomly sit out there and then come back in, you know.
But if we're looking at that, so you probably need a room that would seat, 7 of us, plus, yeah.
And
10.
10 to 12 people.
10.
Yeah.
We don't want that many people in executive session.
So
All
it's
conference
just
rooms.
kind of a medium-sized conference room that
Right.
sits between 10 to 12 people
Yeah.
comfortably. I think that's very doable, and I would recommend having that space, so.
And when you have lobby down here, so what do you envision? I mean, really, we're talking about a meeting room like this, would have a door. I don't know that we need a big lobby area.
You're right. We don't, but we do need a lobby, just like the space outside of this room when you walk in. You know, those doors, when they open up to a small area. That's what we were thinking, a lobby, not a big grand lobby that you would have in a hotel, but something, an ante-space from the outdoors. You walk in, there's a lobby, might be some chairs, and then you walk into the
I'm
main space.
envisioning like the church where we have had the town halls.
Well, I'm kind of
a
thinking like
vestibule.
today we came in and court was going on, so we all come in and we can't come into this room straight in because
hang out
court
there.
was going on, so we all hung out in chairs in the lobby. And it's, not ginormous, but at least there was a spot that we could all sit and wait instead of being outside.
You absolutely need it. I mean, you have to have some sort of space before your large grand space. So.
I mean, you have to sign in for citizens to be heard, you're gonna have tables, you're gonna have stuff, No, well, I mean, they have to be able to sign in, there has to be tables and stuff out
Yeah.
there, so,
Maybe that small office is off of this space
Yeah.
also.
exactly.
So someone before council meetings can sit there and sign people in. And
So if you're going to incorporate restrooms and we'll talk about the kitchen, do you think all that would be tied to the lobby area?
Maybe not the kitchen.
Definitely the
but-
restrooms.
Yeah, the restrooms.
What we hope to hear, it's a warming kitchen, would be connected to the large facility as a whole. And if you imagine a rectangle, a long rectangle, you would have the dais on one end with the closed doors or panels. And then maybe on the opposite side would be pantry, warming kitchen, that type of thing. And it would have, in my mind, I'm thinking would have a roll-up grill. So when you're using it, you just roll up a grill. The kitchen counter comes out of the wall a little bit, and it's wide open to the main area. So just, it's a way of doing it. Doesn't have to be like that, but just, that's what comes to my mind when I think of that space.
And when you talk about the difference between a warming kitchen and a full kitchen, what are the amenities that are within a
warming
full
ki-
kitchen that you wouldn't get with a?
Yeah, the warming kitchen basically has ovens. People bring casseroles and things, something you put in an oven. You're not making any food there. You can bake cookies, you can do popcorn or things like that, but you're just warming things up. You don't have a range top, so that way you don't have to have a hood. And well, once you get into that, then you have to start looking at hoods and fire suppression and grease traps and that sort of thing. And then a semi to full commercial kitchen requires commercial kitchen equipment, and then you get into the $300,000 to $400,000 range of cost for equipment, depending on something like this would in a elementary school and middle school kitchens that we've done in the past before COVID, we would always assume $350,000 for kitchen equipment for a school. This facility would not need that. But we're post-COVID now. Prices have just about doubled on everything, it seems like. And a commercial kitchen, even a small one, would probably be close to a couple $100,000 of equipment if you're not careful. So we just need, we're here to provide exactly what you want, but if you tell me this is my budget, we will work tirelessly to make sure that we're within that budget. And how we do that, we're not, magicians. Something, geopolitical happens in 6 months, we have no idea what prices are gonna do. But how we do that is at every stage, we take drawings and provide an opinion of probable construction costs. So you guys have an idea, okay, the architect says about this. And as we get more information into those drawings, then that probable construction cost is, those drawings are provided to a contractor who's got a lot better idea of what things are costing. And so we start getting prices from general contractors through that process. So we'll do that about 3 times during this project. So when we are wrapping up these drawings, we're getting ready to put them out to bid, you'll have some comfort level that the last number we had was within your budget. Have we been wrong before? Of course we have. We've all been wrong before, but at least we make sure that we check and double check with the general construction community to see if the prices are about right. So
I'm perfectly happy with a warming kitchen. I don't think we need a commercial and/or a full range or any kind of equipment like that.
And we just need staging area for bringing stuff in, setting it down, like you say, warming it up. So I would say no
Pizzas,
commercial
yeah.
kitchen.
Warming.
Warming.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you talked about an oven and putting that would be part of a warming kitchen. We'd have a sink, obviously. Probably have an area that we could put a
Fridge.
microwave or
Microwave.
In a fridge, probably.
in a fridge, yep. Is that,
we typically would put like double ovens on a wall, so people can bring different things and warm them up. And then it's mostly countertops with base cabinets and some upper cabinets, a nice sink, maybe a couple of sinks in that area, a large microwave oven. I think that's probably about it.
Yeah, we're not hosting events like weddings and things like it, so I think that works. Yeah.
And, you know, at some point, there'll be changes to your facility, and there'll be some upgrades that you want to do. But right now, we want to make sure that, you know, whatever the budget is, we meet that budget, we get in with the absolute things that you absolutely need. And then if things change in the future, you could always upgrade your facility down the line. But it's just important to get in with what you absolutely need.
And then I had a question on the outdoor sitting area. And it would be nice, it's not on top of my priority list of things. And yes, we do have a nice area out there. If there was I guess really what were you looking at, how that would tie into the building?
Yeah, see that, I don't think it's a cost issue there. We're not suggesting, now, there probably will be some paving, some concrete paving. Now, something out here you may want, like flagstone or something that's more appropriate. Still, there's lots of masons in this area can probably do that pretty reasonably. But an outdoor seating area, you guys provide the furniture in the future when you need it. That open space, if we utilize the preferred site, would want to be, you know, open to the back side of the property where the trees are. So we're not really having to do much. You want a lot of glass out to look out into the trees. So you're providing maybe 2 or 3 doors to go out there. Maybe a couple of double doors would do it. And the rest of it is just a wall with lots of windows, lots of storefront glass. Just like the storefront they have on the building as you walk in. Something similar to that, where just a continuous glass wall to a certain degree, and maybe solid wall with a couple of windows on the either side. And then that glass wall may have a double door, or maybe 2 sets of double doors at different ends of that large space facing the trees. That's all I was thinking about. It's not a cost thing. You're gonna have the natural light coming into that space regardless, with windows or storefront glass. You're gonna wanna have doors to get out anyway. So the only cost involved would be maybe a patio outside. We can go as cheap as just doing concrete, and or go a little more with flagstone or something like that. So it's not I don't see that as a huge cost.
I think there might be some benefit to having an outside patio area, whether or not we have chairs on it or not, because we have those events out there all the time. And we're standing on grass, and we're trying to bring electricity out there and all that stuff, and we could stand on that patio space and, you know, still have the greenery there. I mean, that could be an option right there.
We will do what you want us to
Yeah.
do, obviously, but we would highly recommend utilizing what you already have and
Yeah.
taking advantage of it.
And if you're just gonna put a patio, we can use it and stand on it.
Are you asking us to make a decision on the removal of the Forha building in your different layouts?
Well,
Oh, wait, a site location.
The site locations
yeah,
for that?
we
'Cause
want to talk a little bit
thinking
about site
offices.
location.
Can we finish the space first? and go to the
Oh.
next slide? I just had one more question. on
Yeah, I'm
space.
sorry.
Okay.
I jumped the gun.
So right here, we can talk about flexible meeting and event space. Are you talking about, let's talk about the main room. So normally the main room will be open, have a seating, let's say for 100 people, just throwing out a number. But are you talking about having like a divider halfway through that could say, make it into 2? What do you mean by flexible meeting and event space? I'm trying to figure out what that means.
It's a good question. I'm trying to think what, that wording came directly from your RFQ, so, but.
What does
the-
it mean to you?
Yeah. To me, it means a room that's big enough. Flexibility means it's big enough that it could be utilized for different things. As far as having a partition to divide the room into 2 smaller spaces, I would not recommend it. We have done many churches, and every church group has a gigantic space that they want to divide into 2, and we always recommend not spending money on a partition that has a high sound transmission coefficient. So they're not cheap, and there's a structural beam that holds them up, and they never use them. They just never, so I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay, that's why I was asking what you
Yeah.
thought it meant.
But flexible enough, just square footage wise, that you are able to do different things in there. And that, again, will come from you. And I agree, we need to provide further, you know, design or graphic information to allow you to get to that point where you tell us that's a good size. But I think that'll be a good next step.
I appreciate that. I'm done with the inside, Jessica, if you want to go on.
So before we move on to the next, if we can just look at this list once again, just to recap, we just want one office, and now we're saying we want one office and one medium-sized conference room. The general storage is in question. How much general storage do we really need? We will provide that information. I think that's it on that side. And you confirmed the warming kitchen. And then you took municipal court out of the equation, so that's taken off the list.
And we prioritize the uses on the right.
And you prioritize what the potential uses will be. Okay,
Added the dais,
Oh, the
the
dais.
built-in dais.
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Thank you for that, I forgot. Yeah. I mean, we always thought we would, but, okay, so this site plan basically just shows the sites that we looked at. I'm sure you've already looked at this drawing and you've kind of read some of these comments, but we initially were given two sites to look at. That's number 1 and number 3. So my initial meeting, I just came by myself, and I met with Clayton and Grant, and we took a walk afterwards, and we looked at site number 1 and site number 2. The preferred site, we were told, is site number 1, and we looked at, site number 1 and site number 3. At that time, number 3 was actually number 2, so that's why I said number 2. And both sites are adequate to provide a facility that you're looking, 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. The preferred site number 1 is the one that we thought would be the best option because of visibility, location. It sits on the corner. It's a civic building or whatever the building ends up being called, but it's a city building. It'll be in a prominent location. We like that. We love the trees. We were already told that building really needs to be removed, and so we felt that general area where the existing building is would lend itself nicely for this new building. We like the trees in the back and the visibility. We also looked at the site number 3, which was number 2 at the time, and that poses a lot of opportunities there as well, but there's a lot of concerns that we had because of power lines. There's costs involved, and to put a building in that piece of property, you're going to be removing a lot of trees. At some point, as this community grows, you're probably going to put a building there at some point. So you're going to lose trees at some point. But I'm right now, if we don't have to do anything on that site, not remove those trees, I'd rather not. But it's not so much about the trees; it's just the power lines, and there's a electrical generator that would have to be relocated. So we didn't like that site, but while we were walking around, we were also given an opportunity to look at that site number 2, and we were told that there's a building there that could be removed, and that could be a potential location for this building also. So we just wanted to kind of show you where we are today, what we've been given to work with, and kind of share with you some ideas that we had. I think I've already talked enough about site number 1, but
When you're looking at site number 1, that's where the existing building's at right now.
yes, sir.
That's going to be torn down. And I believe it's around 2,500 square feet on the footprint. Would you be able to incorporate that same footprint into the design of the new building so that we're adding on to it? And then all the utilities that run into that building, could they be utilized in the manner in where they're at right now?
The utilities can certainly be utilized. We haven't, gone that extra step yet, but my gut tells me that 2,500 square feet might be way too small for you. And the only reason to keep it at that size is to reuse the existing foundation? Is that a thought, or?
Well, you maybe use the existing foundation and we add on to it.
Yes.
So-
Yeah, we could. I'd have to get our structural engineer to look at it and give me his opinion on whether it's worth doing that or not. Usually when you add a new foundation to an existing foundation, so you got to dowel into it, and probably a lot of you all have had additions to your house. So it's done all the time, but there's always complications on a foundation that's just sat there for, 40 years, and a new foundation. Obviously, we'll have soils report to tell us, what the soil's doing there. In this area, you're probably going to be fine, but there's always some concerns about foundations pulling away and that sort of thing. But I'll let the structural engineer decide that. But that could be an option. We certainly will look into that.
And there would be cost savings by already having the utilities run to that building?
It's
Some.
What happens is that you're kind of forced to design in a certain way if you're utilizing that foundation, because right now you got stone on that building, so you got lugs. So we're going to have to use those lugs for stone, maybe metal panels if we want to, but there's nothing out here that has a lot of metal panels or anything like that. So we would probably need to use that foundation as is, and then whatever plumbing is there might need to be trenched to relocate it to another area because of the new design. And then you start eating away at the savings, and at the end of the day, you might as well just remove that foundation. Clean site, new select fill, and then a new foundation. So, but I'll ask that question. That'll be on our list to ask the structural engineer, and we'll report back.
Thanks, sir.
Yep.
I would be in favor of site number 1. I never really assumed any other site, personally. I like site number 1.
It's got the best visibility too, to the street, and if we had to overflow parking into somewhere else, it's easier to get to. So.
That was pretty much what my question was. Are we really discussing getting rid of Forha? Because if we are, their building.
It's our building.
I just meant then it means we need more office buildings and all those things. So that was kind of where I was trying to go with that question of.
We know very little about that building. I mean, we just got started, so
Yeah.
it's just a thought that we were given. Hey, we
I'm
might
in favor
be
of
able to
site
use
one.
that. So, but just something to get you guys thinking and giving us thumbs up, thumbs down direction. But I've always liked that site. Now, site number 1 was really a nice site until that road took, a big chunk of real estate out of that. It did a great job to fix that road and make it contiguous, but it did take a, chunk of real estate from that corner, but we can
That's why we
definitely use
have
it.
you guys figure that out.
We tried to pull the curves back, but they're pretty set in place.
Was there anybody that is in favor of site 3,
No.
2?
No.
Site 1?
But I do
No.
think it's worth noting that no one in city council proposed knocking down the Forha building in any way for this.
Please don't come at us, Forha.
For this project.
On the record, right, Laura?
On the record.
That's good. That's good to know. That's the purpose of sharing this with you all, so.
Site 1.
All right, well, site 2, you've already told us that
Done with that.
So, since we have you, parking, going back to that, if we do site 1, you would look at parking options for that?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And we want to also provide in our design to look at the entire site and maybe provide some recommendations to try clean it up. Because right now, you've got some beautiful trees, and the trees have really informed where parking goes. And so you've kind of paved around the trees, and so parking is, just wherever you can get around those trees. And it all is perfect, but because of the trees. But we want to take a look at it and see if there's any other way of, manipulating that parking based
Because
on
the
what
building
we.
could be angled at a different angle, or, it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be like that, yeah.
Yes. So,
you have a recommendation for a name of this building? Oh, no.
Not in a
Worms.
public setting.
No.
No, I was gonna say something about a parking garage, and then I realized, this is being recorded. I need to stop.
Yeah.
Just kidding, just kidding. Every once in a while, when we sit down with a client in a very first meeting, they're a little concerned, kind of wondering, who are we? What are we going to propose? What kind of work are we going to, what are we going to design on their property? And we always play with the idea, well, we have in mind this glass pyramid. And it's always a nice way to kind of break the ice. But no, you have a vocabulary on this piece of property that needs to be respected. The limestone, the way your buildings look. Do we push the envelope and try to make this building respect what's already here and be, a little different? Yes, absolutely we will. And you guys will tell us, we love it, we don't, do this, do that. So we're always going to provide options. We want you guys to have lots of ideas and options. At the very beginning, it's all easier to do because everything's loose, a sketch. And then once those ideas are funneled through you and you guys give us direction, then we start putting all that together. And at some point, we'll bring some renderings, that kind of photorealistic renderings, where you can kind of see what the exterior of the building could look like. I did want to also introduce, I'm so terrible at remembering these things, but Francisco and Brianna from our office. Francisco is also a principal with our office, and Brianna is a intern architect that's on this project with us, and so they have been working. Mostly all of the work that's been done is by them. I just show up and pretend that I did something. So the last time we were here, we couldn't get off site because Francisco is still kind of walking around taking pictures, and so he's very interested in doing something very appropriate and sensitive on your site. So we look forward to it. Any other questions? Or
Well, I think you have a
comments?
timeline schedule
Yes, sir.
for the last
Yeah.
slide. And I had a question related to it. So we've kind of given you I kind of view it, we've kind of narrowed it down to requirements. But if you brought this back and we looked at it and it was just, something that we needed to cut back on, say that, you came in with a 200-person meeting room and the cost was way above what we anticipated, and we say, no, we want to cut that back down or make modifications. Is there an opportunity to do that?
Yes, I mean, we want to make sure that we don't get to the end where we have construction documents.
Right.
We have lots of details. We have all of our engineers. A lot of times when our clients ask us to provide minor changes, the worst thing we can do is to nickel and dime our clients. We never do that. So if you guys come back and say, hey, we really like you guys to, push this over here, and I don't want that door here, I want it here, we'll make all that work. The problem we always have is if it happens later during the design process, then we have to go back to our engineers, and they have to, if the room size just slightly changes, that changes the CFMs that are needed to air condition that room. It changes the electrical requirements. If we're moving a door over, then he's got to, move things. And so our engineers are not always that, great about doing free work. So we always tell our clients, we will beat them, we will beg with them and say, guys, we need this done. We don't want a change order, or not a change order, but we don't want additional costs involved. But if it's a major thing, it's hard to do. So we want to do all these things in the very front end where it's simple to do. In the conceptual phase, even in the 30% design phase, during that time, we will spend a lot of time kind of reviewing things with you. And at some point during the 60% phase, we'll start getting some feedback from contractors as far as what, things are going to cost. We would like to, with your permission, we would like to proceed thinking that this is going to be a wood structure. I mean, it's to save money, wood is very forgiving. We can basically build a large house on the, everything on the inside would be commercial quality like you have here. It's not going to be, residential door frames or anything like that. I'm just saying that the superstructure itself, the wood, the frame, the skeleton of your building could be wood. And I think we could save some money there as opposed to going conventional. Something this small lends itself nicely. And we've done really nice, even, 6, 7, 8,000 square foot office buildings for really medical office buildings for doctors, all single floor, one level.
When
with
you're
all out of
talking
wood.
conventional, are you talking like metal beams or?
Metal studs, steel and metal studs.
That's fine.
And that's what's typically done, but we would like to approach it a little differently.
Okay.
And I don't think you're going to see it, see the difference, because the exterior of the building is going to look a certain way regardless. And then once you get inside the building, all your hardware for your doors, your door frames, all of that will be commercial quality.
I think we kind of depend on you to make recommendations like that, and we can
Okay.
opine on
Okay.
it. Because, I mean, that space for a building like this. We don't build buildings in our lives, so I think that would
Yeah.
be my thought.
I appreciate that. A lot of times, there's always, I think it's just, the appropriate thing is just to make sure that you run that by council and make sure that they're understanding of what approach you want to take. And it's just a matter of saving money, just trying to figure out ways to help you do more with less.
Yeah, when you brought it up, I was just thinking through the process. I mean, we're building a building that potentially would last for many, many years to support the city operations here, support the city and the operations. I believe the building, City Hall, is a wood frame building. I think when we did the refurbishment on it, it was wood frame. So really, I was just thinking through, I mean, what's the drawback from doing a wood frame building and not, is there?
There's very few drawbacks. The only drawback is, you're dealing with termites at some point. But we all live in homes that are all out of wood, so we have to think a little different when it comes to that. But for the most part, I live in a house that's over 100 years old.
Right.
So and it's still standing. It's fine. It's it's got its little creaks here and there, but
And with
it
the use that
works.
we're talking about, that we've kind of gone through, if you looked at the priorities, it's not we hope to get a lot of use out of it, but it's not like a high use from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, commercial building.
Right. The only thing that'll change a little bit in this structure, first of all, the other way to save some money is to design a very beautiful structure that's simple, right? Not a lot of push and pull and push and pull,
Right.
and roofs doing all kinds of things. So even a very simple rectangular structure that may have a little bit something coming out here or something going in, very simple roof, maybe a simple shed roof or a gable, whatever it ends up being, you'll have plenty of opportunities to look at ideas and give us an indication of what you like. But a simple structure out of wood. The difference is you've got that large space is going to require some open spans. So probably depending, if we go with a gable roof, you may have some like wood trusses, and I would recommend to have the volume in the room. So a very inexpensive house that you do to get big spans, it's a big rectangular space, and you put wood trusses all the way across, but they're just just standard trusses, so you have a flat ceiling inside. I would not recommend that. So maybe if we use a gable roof design, then we use some wood trusses that are a little bit nicer with gusset plates, that you actually see the truss, and the ceiling's cathedral, and you see the ceiling and the lights. So that kind of starts giving you an indication of what that space could look like, and it still has the same vernacular feel of what's already here, as opposed to that glass pyramid that I was talking about earlier. So,
You like the Frostbank Tower downtown? That one?
yeah, we're actually, our office is right across the street, so I have to see that monstrosity every day.
It's not that like sphere from Vegas or.
Yeah, so.
So what it really started with the questioning, so we're going to have, we'll have 2 or 3 meetings where we'll meet again and be able to go through the drawings or the concept plan
Yes.
to really look at it and go, does it meet our requirements? Are there any changes? And I think we'd all be pretty comfortable at doing that in the next 2, 3 meetings so that we're not
Okay.
waiting till the very end to say,
And this is a proposed schedule that I provided in our agreement or our fee proposal to staff. And it's, most clients, when they get ready for something and they want it, they want to get it done. So this is somewhat aggressive in the beginning. We don't know because we don't know how many meetings we're still going to have. But it's a schedule that we can meet. But again, this is just our idea of what we can do. If you guys want to extend something because you want a couple more meetings, we're totally comfortable with that. We're not trying to race through your project, but we are providing you a schedule that has, enough get up and go where you're thinking that you're going to get a building soon. So we want to get through it, but we want to make sure that we have enough time. The first 2, the facility planning phase is when we're kicking off that today. And the next phase, those are the most critical phases. And those are the 2 phases where you have a lot more leverage in changing things. The minute we go into 60% design, we can still make changes, but then it becomes more expensive. There's still not a contractor involved, but then I've got to go back to my engineers and they're going to want to get paid for additional changes once we have approval on certain things. So every time we go through a phase, we'll provide it. You guys say, okay, that's exactly the floor plan we want. Keep moving. And we'll do that. And then we set that approval process and we move on to the next thing. So, but we can do this this is just a proposed. So after this meeting, our next phase, our next meeting would be to meet with certain groups that are going to utilize that building. And I'm sure staff will work with you all to decide who that is. We're just going to show up and have questions for them and get an idea of what they need. And then after we get that, then we'll come back and share that with you. Because there may be some things that we're told that you guys are going to be happy about and maybe some things that you want us to change. So we want to make sure that as we progress, you guys are involved and giving us, the thumbs up to move forward.
all right. Any other questions or comments?
Very informative.
Make sure our election judge is involved with that.
Based on our discussions that we've had tonight, is this everything you were looking for to walk away with?
Yes,
Okay.
especially meeting you all. We were concerned you guys are going to be really tough, so. No, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to, getting to know you all a little bit better and working with you all. And anything that you like or don't like, you need to let us know right away, and we'll make sure that we course correct. So this is your building. This is important, so we want to make sure that we're, working side by side. So.
And does anybody else have any comments, any questions? Staff, residents? Yes, sir.
Wes Pieper, the other side of Fair Oaks Ranch. Just one thought. After paring down and taking out some of those things that, municipal court and stuff that seemed like it was kind of crazy, but the only thing that hits me is be serious, give serious consideration to whether squeezing this thing, the size a little bit bigger or much bigger in order to encompass the town halls. It seems like if you took the town hall concept off of there and really kind of duplicate what we had before, maybe a little bit bigger. The council chambers that we used to have, you know, very seldom did that facility have a lack of room for standard meetings, you know. Maybe 2% of the time. Generally, there was plenty of room for Seth and I. We're not that big, and the staff, but for the vast majority of the time, that size of facility, I don't even know how many people that could sit, that could hold, but it was sufficient except for the real outlier meetings. The real different, I think, where you really, need more room is potentially for town halls. So, maybe look at it as a, combination of a cost issue and logistics of parking. The bigger size facility, yeah, it could maybe handle most, if not all of those town halls, but even then, if you think it's really going to be a real barn burner town hall, you might still have to say, well, this might not be big enough for us, and we've got to go look at one of the churches, which have been pretty sufficient. They've got nice facilities, and I don't think we've ever had a big issue with that. I don't know what it costs to rent them, but just to look at how much bang for the buck more are we getting, and you go with the bigger size and handling the town halls here on site, then the parking really becomes an issue, which for the council meetings, even the extraordinary ones, I don't think that ever became an issue. So just a thought is that whether it's worth going that extra mile to try to squeeze in the town halls also.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Anybody from staff or? Yes, sir.
Oh, yay.
Thank you, Mayor. Grant Watanabe, Public Works Director for the city. So I just wanted to put 5,000 square feet in perspective because it sounds like a lot. What we did was measure the size of this room. This room is about 1,200 square feet. So if you can imagine 4 of these rooms, and then you start taking away room for the lobby and the bathrooms and the kitchen and the office and the conference space, then you're really not left with a whole lot. So just to put it in perspective, it sounds big, but when you actually see it, it probably won't be. That's just my piece.
You said this room, 1,200?
The room we're in right now is 1,200 square feet, yes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Got anything else we need?
Not from my side, no, sir. But do you have more comments, Robert?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. I got everything I needed. Thank you.
Well, I
Thank
know
you.
from my vantage point, I appreciate the discussion very much. Some of these items may have seemed like a foregone conclusion, but I think it was very important to have this, to ask the questions, narrow down the options so that we all have a good understanding of what we want this facility to be. So I think this was very important to have, and I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. And thank y'all both, all 3 of y'all, for being here tonight. Christine, anything else that
No,
you
sir.
need as part of the meeting tonight? Scott, anything else you need to?
No, sir.
All right, I have the time now is 6:15 and we are adjourned.